Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning and welcome to the renewed phase of GREEN4SEA. As you can see, many things have changed. I like the new look. Our colleague Andreas Philippou spoke about EU ETS. In the next 12 minutes, I will try to communicate the basic principles behind the FuelEU Maritime regulation. The EU ETS is the economic measure and the FuelEU Maritime is the technical measure. FuelEU Maritime is complementary to the EU ETS. They go together. It aims to reduce the greenhouse gas intensity, which is emissions per energy, grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per megajoule, introduces onshore electricity supply for certain types of vessels, and last but not least, incentivizes the utilization of RFNBOs. RFNBO stands for renewable fuels of non-biological origin, no biogenic components in the fuel. Interconnection with the other packages of Fit for 55 exists. FuelEU is the fuel demand, represents the fuel demand. What do we burn? ETS is how much we burn. Renewable Energy Directive is the fuel supply, and Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive is the fuel distribution. And these three together eliminate the chicken and egg dilemma, thus cooking an omelette. It comes into force as of January 1st, 2025 and applies for now to ships over 5,000 gross tonnage. 100% of emissions counting for intra-EU voyages and 50% for extra-EU. The intensity is computed from well to wake basis, from cradle to grave, for a production of the fuel until its combustion. The greenhouse gas intensity limit starts from 19.16 grams carbon dioxide equivalent per megajoule, being reduced every 5 years. Onshore power supply or zero emission technology is compulsory as of 2030 for containers, passenger vessels and ropaxes, if they stay in the port for more than 2 hours. In addition, there is a flexible compliance mechanism via pooling, bunking and borrowing. Until December 31st, 2029, this is the end of the bonuses, any ship having ice class notation may request to exclude the additional energy due to sailing in ice conditions. Member states may exempt voyages performed by passenger ships to or from a port of call on an island with less than 200,000 permanent inhabitants. Unfortunately, Crete has more than 200,000. Voyages between a port of call located in an outermost region, and outermost regions are, for example, the French colonies in the Caribbean, an example, and another port or call located in an outermost region. These do not count in the equation. Furthermore, for voyages departing from or arriving at a port of call located in an outermost region under the jurisdiction of a member state, count 50% instead of the typical 100%. The well-to-tank carbon intensity is computed for a fuel mixture as per this formula. RWD is what we call a reward factor. It goes in the denominator, and it is a boost, it's a bonus for the RFNBOs. If we burn RFNBOs, we reduce the intensity by a factor of 2. Unfortunately, this is valid only until the January 1st of 2034. Then, no bonus. Notice that the introduction of methane and nitrous oxides in the greenhouse gas is done through the green warming potential, which is the equivalence of the damage done by these two gases compared to carbon dioxide. The tank-to-wake formula is depicted here. The total intensity is the sum of the two. Notice that in case of a single fuel, the intensity does not depend on the mass of the fuel burned. It simplifies. It's numerator, denominator, MI, only one in the blend, so it simplifies. There are two ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions: improvement of energy efficiency, logistics, design, operations, technology, and using, of course, less fuel. A critical element that is still missing, even at the IMO level, for many alternative fuels, is the well-to-tank emission factors. From tank to wake, it is easy because it is the emission factor is the carbon content percent times 3.666. For biofuels, emission factors can be found in the Renewable Energy Directive 2 and the delegated RED 3. If there is certification, values other than the default ones may be used. Reductions may be applied for ice-class ships, as we said, sailing in ice conditions, until December 31st, 2029. Credit also is given in the case of wind-assisted propulsion. How? By multiplying the intensity by a certain component depending on the ratio of the wind power divided by the total. Examples of default emission factors are depicted in this slide for various types of fuels like fossil, biogenic, and e-fuels. The values I have here for the e-fuels come from a working paper of IMO MEPC 76. Unfortunately, there is a problem because there are differences between the emission factors defined in Annex 2 of FuelEU Directive compared to the ones given by IMO. So this has to be, I believe, the emission factors must be harmonized. Also, I will give an award for the guy who will tell me the emission factor for green methanol, for synthetic or electric methanol. There are many names, RFNBO methanol. The bunker delivery notes must include the lower calorific value, the greenhouse gas total emission intensity, and the certification for the specific fuel production pathway. The same fuel can be done various pathways, and depending on the pathway, we define the emission factor. If there is blending, info for all the components of the blend must be provided. RFNBOs are promoted by FuelEU through the RWD factor. If we do not achieve at least a 1% percentage during the 2030 year, the requirement is increased to 2% from 2034 onwards. Please note that there is going to be another penalty, second penalty, based on the percentage of RFNBOs utilized by the ship. RFNBOs are made via hydrogen produced by renewable sources of energy and carbon captured. Carbon captured from air, unfortunately, direct air capture, which is not very reasonable because direct air capture is in the air, carbon dioxide is 0.03% compared to the exhaust gases, which is 5 to 6%. Where a ship has a compliance surplus for a reporting period, it is possible to bank the surplus. This is the flexibility mechanism, and use it in the following reporting period under two conditions. The amount shall be less than 2% of the reference greenhouse gas intensity multiplied by the energy consumption. It can be used for only one consecutive period. We can even borrow for next year, but then we have to pay 10% more in emissions. No free lunches. Pooling mechanism, utilizing the surplus, can be used to reward and incentivize overachievers because they can sell the surplus to other ships that are deficient, and encourage the rapid deployment of the most advanced options, and in particular the e-fuels, the zero-emission technologies. Here I have an example of exploring the loopholes. I call it a loophole, the pooling, and it is valid for 2030. As the years come by, the effect is reduced more and more. We have a vessel which burns green methanol, and it can account for 11 more in 2030. 11 more that burn HFO can be balanced by one that burns green methanol. But after 5 years, the number reduces to 5. 5 more to 2. I believe 5 more, it's history. But presumably by that time, the green fuels will be cheap, upscaled, and will be easier to find and burn, and cheaper. The penalty, this is a very useful poster for the well-to-wake of various fuels that shows anything from LNG to crude oil to e-fuels to gray fuels. And you can observe that if you are going to burn gray methanol, gray ammonia, gray hydrogen, is much better to burn crude oil. Here we go to the important part, which is the penalty. The penalty is based on this formula. Its stringency is increasing with the years because of the reduction of the limit, and especially for large vessels that are not compliant, they expect to pay a large amount of money even in 2025. Notice that the LNG can cover us until for high pressure diesel up till 2040. I have to tell you that the proposal of EU at IMO is even stricter. The penalties are even higher. A schematic with a working mechanism of FuelEU is depicted here, covering all the basic ingredients of the recipe. And to finish, take-home points: starts 2025, use less and cleaner fuels, and apply pooling, banking, and borrowing. A review will happen in 2028 to include possibly vessels of 400 gross ton and above, and in general is, allow me to say, this is my personal opinion, is a measure that aims to enrich primarily the budget of member states, in my opinion. And to show the criticality of this, unfortunately, this is a regulation that we could be without it, because I believe that the only entity responsible for setting this type of regulations is IMO. Thank you.